advancing your career, it's important to consider your strengths, or skill set. That means knowing what your skills are, continuously working on them, and of course, being able to talk about them. And that goes double for those looking for a new job. So much of the job search process, finding roles that are a good fit, writing your resume, interviewing, it's about understanding and telling your story. And your skills are the superpowers that make you the hero of that story. So in this workshop, we are going to uncover those strengths and prepare you to talk confidently about what you're bringing to the table. I'm Brandy Warwis from Indeed's Job Seeker Experience team. We're responsible for creating helpful events and resources like this Jobcast for our users, like you. I'm excited to have Tracy Tim with us again today. Tracy is a career clarity expert who's dedicated to helping professionals identify and pursue their ideal careers. Her online learning program and community, Thrivist, teaches clients how to unlock their professional purpose and potential so they can truly thrive. Take it away, Tracy.
Thank you, Brandy, for that warm introduction. So these are the 5 learning objectives that we're going to cover today. First and foremost, why you need to know your strengths and know the depth of your professional value. Then we're going to talk about what types of skills can really contribute to the depth of that professional value that you want to share with the world. Then we're going to move on to where you can actually discover and even strengthen your professional value. Of course, all of this has the goal of number 4, figuring out how to articulate this value properly so that you can advance your career to the next step and the next stage. And then last but not least, we want to wrap up with how to create value-driven competence for the long haul so that not only are you served now, but you will be well served into the future of your long-term career. All right, so let's get this started with objective 1, which is why you must not only know, but also be able to share your professional value. So today's thesis is very simple. It's if not you, who? If not you, who? So as we're going through today's webinar, I want you to remember that this may be challenging and this may be difficult, but always, always, always remember that within the context of your own career, if you are not the one advocating for yourself, it is a huge ask to ask anyone else to do that for you. So it's vital that you equip yourself with the knowledge and the depth of your own professional value so that you can be the one pushing your career forward when no one else will do it. So remember, if not you, who? Now, we cannot overstate the importance of taking responsibility for your own career. So let me just start out by saying that your employer is not going to manage your career for you. Now, this may go without saying, but I just want to hammer this point home because employers are there to provide incredible opportunities for us, and many of them do an incredible job at that. But many of you are also looking for new opportunities right now, and you are the one in the driver's seat. It is your responsibility to do everything at your disposal to take advantage of these opportunities when they arise. So that mindset shift when you're thinking about if not you, who, is moving yourself from the passenger seat of your own career and hoping that your company or your boss or your peers are going to help you drive that car forward and putting yourself back in the driver's seat, putting yourself back in a position of control now in order to do what you need to do to overcome a couple of myths that may be holding you back when it comes to your career advancement. So we're going to go through these myths together. Myth number 1 is, I see this all the time, is that if I work hard, I will get noticed. Unfortunately, in today's world, not only are most of us already working pretty hard, but most of us are focused on our own work. So we cannot let our work speak for itself. We have to not only do good and hard work, but we have to speak about it openly, honestly, and clearly if we want to get noticed, which is vital. The second myth is if I wait long enough, I'll get that raise. Now, how many of us have been there? I know I've been there where you know, if I just wait another 6 months, if I just wait another year, if I just wait another 18 months, then what I've earned is going to come through. It's going to happen. You know, sometimes that's the case, but more often than not, if we're not consistently advocating for our own value as professionals, no amount of time is going to make up for that lack of of advocating for ourselves. So this is the second myth that I want you to overcome today, is that if you wait long enough, that raise is going to come around. Then myth number 3 is, if I know my value, I'll get rewarded. Now, this myth is a little bit more subtle, because the key here is that it's not just about knowing your professional value. It's about being able to clearly articulate that value in a way that makes sense for a business, in a way that makes sense for a business to reward. So I'll say that again. It's not just about knowing, but also about articulating your value in a way that makes business sense. So knowing how you save your business money, how you make your business money, and the value that you and your skills add to a professional working environment. So if we work really hard to overcome these myths, both by knowing and articulating the depth of our professional value, that is the key driver to continued success, whether you're looking for a job, which many of you are right now, or maybe you just want to level up in the career that you already have. Both knowing and articulating your value, not just about how good you are at stuff, but the truth of your professional value, is going to be the key to seeing you through, not only to the next step in your career, but to long-term and sustainable success. So hopefully now that you understand the stakes and you know why this is so important, we're going to move on to really helping you understand the depth of your professional skills with Professional Skills 101. So this is the foundation that we're going to be setting for the rest of our conversation today. So when we talk about skills and professional values, what are we really talking about? So when I say value add and that you are a professional, what does that mean? It means that it really begins with our skills. Our professional skills are at their core just the abilities that help us succeed at the work that we do each and every day. These can come from our behavioral habits, they can come from our personality traits, they can come from our depth of knowledge or expertise in a certain subject area, and skills come in a variety of categories and types. And we're going to be diving into really deeply those different categories and types as we go throughout today to help you get a better understanding. Very importantly, you can have both natural skills and strengths, and then you can also have skills and strengths that you've nurtured over time. And by nurture, I mean something that you've learned or earned based on various life experiences. This is a really important part to remember, that we aren't just given a set of skills or strengths and then stuck with those for the rest of our lives. That would be what we call a fixed mindset. Rather, each of us is growing and capable of growth all the time. So today I'm really going to encourage you not only to take a good look at the skills and the strengths that you already have, but that you can start to think about and embrace this growth mindset, that you can nurture strengths you already have and make them better, but you can also add to that toolkit at any given time. So let's jump right into the very beginning of what I think are the 3 basic sets of skills. First of all, you have your hard skills. When we talk about hard skills, what we're talking about is the specific technical knowledge or training that you have gained through any of your life experiences, including, most obviously, your career, but also through education and other means. So these could be languages, understanding of technology, understanding of physical or mechanical work, understanding of networks or analysis or data, anything that you have to technically learn or earn over time. These are going to be called your hard skills. Now, many of us sometimes, I think, put a little too much emphasis here in the hard skills area because it kind of keeps us static. So the second thing that I want you to remember and think about is, of course, your soft skills. Soft skills are the personal habits and traits that shape how you do the work that you do on your own and with others. So it's not just the technical work that you know how to do, but it's how you deliver that work uniquely based on either how you're hardwired or how you've learned to deliver that work over time. So these can be things like extreme amounts of empathy. Maybe you deliver your work with lots of effectiveness and dependability. Maybe you present really open-minded, so you're constantly learning, or people applaud you for your teamwork or your creativity. Soft skills are the things that are a little bit more difficult to quantify, but they are definitely qualifiable. I can look at a person and say, wow, they are gifted at critical thinking. And that may not be a technical skill, but it is certainly a value add. It is valuable and something very important to note about yourself. Then, of course, and this might be the most important one for all of us who are here today looking for a job or looking to make a transition, are your transferable skills. Now, you'll find that some of your hard skills are not quite so transferable because maybe they're very specific to an industry or a type of technology. And then also some of your soft skills may not be universally transferable, although they will be much easier to transfer in general. Transferable skills are the ones that carry over from one role to another because they are useful both to you and to your employer across various jobs and industries. So things like decision making, or being able to handle a lot of tasks at once, or being creative in solving problems, or collaborating, right? We're almost always not working in a vacuum or almost always working with other people. So collaboration is going to be massively valuable no matter where you're working or who you're communicating with. All of these transferable skills are qualifiable and some even quantifiable, and they add massive value to an employer. So these are definitely not to be left out. In fact, for those of you making this transition and looking to really talk about your professional value, especially in a brand new industry or in a brand new environment, you're really going to want to focus on these transferable skills. Now, personally, I really like to take something that's big and ambiguous and give it structure so that I can understand it better. So you may be looking at the depth of your transferable skills and going, oh my gosh, I know how to do so many things. And maybe I've had so many different years of experience. How the heck am I going to draw this down into something that's manageable and something that I can actually articulate and share? Well, we've drawn these skills down into 5 helpful categories that hopefully will give you a framework to start thinking about your own personal and professional skills so that you can start to share those in the next step in your career. I like to break these down into these 5 categories. You've got business and finance. So is there anything that you know how to do that's particularly related to how business works and how money works? Then you've got communication and interpersonal. So as you're working with other people, how do you do that well, whether it's through writing or speaking or other means? Then you've got leadership and management. Do you step up, and how do you step up? And what type of leader are you? What type of manager are you? Are you the type that's much more gifted at delegation, or the type that's going to be a little bit more articulate and forceful about how you like to get things done? Then you've got sales and marketing. This is a huge value add to businesses. So do you have any skills or knowledge that are transferable in the areas of how to find clients and actually make money and allowing business to grow? And then last but not least, we have data and technology. We're getting further and further into a technological world and space, and as we continue to do that, it becomes more complex. So this is going to be an even more important category of transferable skills as we move forward. Now, if these categories don't really resonate with you, that's okay. You can find other categories. Indeed has some really great tips for that on their website, so please feel free to check that out on your own time. So remember that this was just Professional Skills 101. So hopefully now you understand what kind of data and what kind of information we're looking for. But where do you discover these unique skills and value that you have as a professional? So if you're taking notes, this is how you can start looking for where your skills live so that you can find them and then articulate them powerfully moving forward. I think there are 2 really core places that we can look when it comes to finding our strengths. First and foremost, we want to look at our nature. That is the characteristics and abilities that you were born with that are influenced by things like genetics and other biological factors. I kind of like to call this your hard wiring as a professional. So there's going to be your personality and your gifts, your aptitudes. Those are all incredibly valuable. And today we're going to talk very deeply about that first. How to value these more accurately, of course, because they come so naturally and easily. But then we also want to honor your nurture. Your nurture includes the characteristics and abilities that you learn through the influence of external factors like your environment or exposure. So this could be work experiences, it could be education, it could be your various life experiences now that you've, worked so hard to earn over time. because you've worked so hard to learn and earn these skills, we do not want to overlook them when we're talking about your professional value. So nature, like I said, is going to be a combination of self-reflection, looking at assessments, and then asking friends for feedback. Whereas nurture is going to be more personal, looking at your experiences, whether that's your education, your life experiences, or your work experience, and diving really deeply into those areas. So let's start off with nature. Where do we find the skills that you were born with? Well, I find that there are really three meaningful tools in this area. First and foremost, we want to look at self-reflection. You've got to at least do a little bit of this work on figuring out your own value in order to start adding on to that through feedback from other people and through assessments. But as you know, this can be one of the most difficult parts of discovering the depth of your professional value, because guess what? You're so close to the problem. One of my business coaches always says that asking ourselves to do our own depth of self-reflection is sort of like asking a gifted cardiothoracic surgeon to do her own open heart surgery. You happen to just be a little too close to the problem and you're lacking the proper perspective to get it right and to get what you want out of it. So that's why we address that issue by adding a couple other exercises in this area. One of those is third-party objective perspective. Getting feedback from others about our skills and knowledge and expertise is insanely valuable. And then we also want to take some assessments so that we have our own understanding of our own value, and it grows in depth and in accuracy and in clarity from those assessment results. So if you're taking notes and if you're following along here, this is going to be one of the screens that you'll want to screenshot, because there are some questions that you can ask yourself to do self-reflection on your own personality, behaviors, and gifts. So first of all, what skills and abilities do you have that make you feel the most confident when you're doing them? Maybe your communication is on point, or you're just an excellent listener and have great empathy. What are the activities you could do for countless hours? When do you feel lost in an activity, like you're in flow? Is it when you're conversing? Is it when you're strategizing? For me, it's these presentations, right? This is not only something I've learned how to do over time, but it's something that I could do for hours and maybe lose my voice and still have energy, as you guys could probably tell. So then you can ask yourself, what environments do you thrive in the most? Where do you just feel like a dolphin in the ocean gliding effortlessly through the water, right? What problems are you naturally inclined or excited to solve? What gets your juices flowing when you think about, oh, that just doesn't work the way I wish it did? Maybe it's health and wellness. Maybe it's happiness. Maybe it's inclusivity. Or what makes you feel the most motivated? When do you get the most excited to actually get something done? Is it when you're working with a team? Is it when you're working independently? Is it when you get a pat on the back and recognition? Is it when you get that quiet atta girl after the job is done? And then what aspects of your personality would you like to be able to use more? If you could bring your whole self to work, what would you like to actually be doing? Would you like to just be funny? Would you like to be informal and have your shoes off while you're doing your job? Would you like to be thinking about the future, right? These are all really important qualities to know about yourself. And if you want to be using it more, then it's highly likely that you're not using it enough and not leveraging that depth of your value. But remember, we are a little bit limited at looking at our own strengths objectively. So in order to get a more well-rounded view, I recommend a handful of assessments. Now, these are just 3 of my favorites. There are also 3 that you can get online for free. So this is another good opportunity for a screenshot. I recommend a breadth of assessments that include your strengths, your personality, your behaviors, your motivators, and that's why I've suggested these 3 here. So High Five is just an online free version of a strengths assessment. It's going to allow you to identify your top 5 strengths and then their individual applications so you can put them into action. 16 Personalities is a very robust mix of Myers-Briggs and the Big 5 model of personality. So this is going to teach you about your personality type and why you do things the way that you do them. And then my absolute personal favorite, because I discovered it and worked with it for quite some time, is the predictive index. What the predictive index shows you is actually your workplace behaviors and drivers so that you can identify your ideal work environment and your ideal work type based on how you're hardwired. So again, this is going back to that. Do you feel like a dolphin in the ocean? It's going to give you a sense of where you fit the best in the working world. So screenshot that. These are all really great assessments, but again, there's so many more out there. I just encourage you to take a breadth of them, take as many as you want, and whatever resonates with you, keep it, and whatever doesn't resonate with you, just let it go. Okay. So then last but not least, and this one is going to be the biggest challenge for most of us here today, is again, it can be very difficult to access our own natural gifts. I mean, when something comes easily to us, it's harder to see the value in it the same way that other people do. And that's why it's so important to seek feedback from people you trust who know you the best. So I'm going to challenge you today, and this is a big kid challenge. So I want to put on your big boy, big girl pants because this is a big challenge. And I want you to brainstorm a list of up to 25 people. And before you go, Tracy, I don't know 25 people. I promise you do, but just get as close to 25 as possible. And the reason is I want you to get enough people to ask this one question to. You want to ask them this one simple question. What are my 3 best qualities? That's it. What are my 3 best qualities? And then you let them answer, and you look at those answers and you look for patterns and similarities and trends. Did all 25 people, or however many people respond, happen to say that you have humor or compassion? Or did they happen to say that you're great at getting stuff done? There are going to be some significant patterns from this data, because I believe when you show up as your best, you show up consistently. And you guys, getting this feedback from people is a really incredible way to better understand the depth of your own natural value as a professional.
Tracy, I love that this is inclusive of people outside of your work, because it's possible those friends and family get to see a strength in you that you don't regularly exercise in your current work environment, but maybe you should be finding a role where you can utilize that skill.
I absolutely love that, Brandy. And that's totally why we do a breadth of the type of person in this exercise. It's because when you show up at your best, you're adding value no matter where that is. It could be personal or professional. And this is a great opportunity to identify a strength that you just may be overlooking and would add a lot more value in your professional life. And hey, maybe you might get a little raise along with adding it back in there. So there we go. All right. So we talked about your nature. Now we're going to move on to how to discover the skills from your nurture. There are 3 core places to look when you're going to look for your skills that you've learned or earned over time. First of all, we've got your education. Now that can be both formal, as in degrees and certifications, but it can also be informal, the quote unquote, school of life or school of hard knocks. Then you've got just your life in general. You've been cultivating activities since you were born, hobbies, travel, extracurricular activities. And these are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to your unique set of strengths and your unique set of skills, because these experiences are unique to you. And then, of course, maybe the most obvious is going to be your work experience. But again, this can be both paid and unpaid. So we want you to use something like volunteering in this section as well. So here's how you can dive into each of these 3 areas. When you look at your education on the formal side, just take stock of what you've learned. So look for your degrees, certifications first. This is going to be really the most obvious. And then go a little deeper. Start to ask yourself, what topics did you enjoy learning about the most? Maybe there's some inspiration there. Start to ask yourself what degrees or certifications you've considered, but maybe life just wasn't going in that direction and something got in the way. You just decided not to do it. I guarantee that curiosity is probably still there in some powerful way, and that can lead to a depth of knowledge and additional skills and expertise. Or look at the topics you currently enjoy talking about the most. Maybe you're doing some self-education. Look at the books that are sitting on your bookshelf right now. I bet you have a subject matter expertise that you didn't even realize that you had. And then there are the subjects that you want to learn or master more, right? That you maybe wish other people knew more about. And that's a huge sign, a beacon of something that you have a depth of interest in that you can go even deeper into. And then, of course, you've got your informal education. So again, this is books, maybe even podcasts that you're listening to, or magazines that you read, news outlets that you follow, articles that you read consistently. There are patterns here, and that is why this area is worth exploring. You can look at subjects that are common throughout all of those things. But again, whether it's books or magazines or periodicals, the topics that you seek to learn about informally, subjects you wish other people knew more about, and all of that in your informal education is constant and consistent, so don't overlook it. And then, of course, as you're learning and growing, remember, we're working from transitioning from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So here are a couple of examples of places you can go to fuel that desire for more knowledge. There's GCF Global, where you can get a depth of understanding into different tutorials and other networking skills. Udemy, Udacity, Coursera has some incredible courses. Big shout out to where I went to college, Yale. There's an incredible course on happiness on Coursera right now. Ed2Go has some incredible courses as well. There are always really great ways to nourish yourself. And in this wonderful, technical world that we're in now, it can be cheap or even free and very easy to access online. Okay, so now I want to transition to life experiences. This one always gets overlooked the most, but it's always fascinating because our students find so much value here. We've even had clients who graduated from our Career Clarity programs who draw almost all of their professional skills simply from very unique life experiences, which is fascinating. So here's where you start when you want to dive into your life experiences. What voluntary activities are you involved in outside of school and work? Just look through one maybe normal week or maybe a handful of weeks if you kind of go on a cadence and just see what you do outside of work. Where do you spend your time and who is it with? And that's going to be a good sign of where you can maybe draw some skill. Reflect on those activities and then identify the ones that make you feel like you're thriving. And don't just stop at, yes, this makes me feel like I'm thriving. Ask yourself why. What aspect of those activities do you want to incorporate into your career? A really easy example from my life is that I play softball. One of the things I love about softball is I get to be a leader on the field. I know what I'm doing. I have a lot of experience playing softball. I played in college. And so I get to lead and tell people what to do and sort of encourage my team. And that's a huge sign of a skill and a strength that I can leverage professionally, even though that's not a professional experience necessarily. So then ask yourself, what activities did or do you spend your time doing simply because you love them? Simply because you love them. And is there a creative way that you could incorporate those activities into your work? What hobbies or interests do you wish you pursued or you wish you made more time for? This could have to do with your family. This could have to do with things that nourish you personally. Remember, we don't want to just stop at identifying what those things are, but you want to take one step deeper and figure out why. And then what aspects of the above activities could you potentially incorporate into your career if you were allowed to be a little bit creative? All of these strengths and all of these skills are leverageable. Remember, nothing is wasted unless we choose to waste it. Then last but not least, I want you to look at your work experiences. Now, again, many of you have been working for however many years now, so it can be a little overwhelming to look at all of your cumulative work experiences. So I have a tactic for you to break it down to make it a little bit easier. So first, I want you to list out all of your previous experiences, both paid and unpaid. Start with present day and work your way backwards to as many jobs as you can remember. Then I want you to go through each experience carefully and evaluate the following components. So don't just look at it globally and say, I liked it or I didn't like it. Look at what you've learned and break it down. So these are the questions that you're going to ask yourself to break down. Number one, what did I enjoy the most about this experience? Number two, what did I learn from this? Can I draw any specific set of knowledge, skills, expertise, subject matter, et cetera? What did I actually learn in that experience? You can even learn soft skills. Remember, I learned to be patient. I learned that I have a skill for being around smart people. I don't know. What can I use going forward is question number three. So what's transferable from this experience to where I want to go next? And then my favorite little secret sort of extra question is, what do I want to stretch towards? What about that experience was exciting or made me curious that I want more of, that I desire in my future career? Then you want to look at all of the answers that you've written and start to draw conclusions by analyzing your responses, spotting the trends, and recording those trends. You're going to see some very significant patterns throughout this process. Whether you've been ignoring a skill or highlighting a strength is going to show up very quickly when you do it this way. So I highly encourage you not to get too overwhelmed by the depth of your work experience, but break it down with these questions so that you can really dive into the depth of your professional value, what you've learned from each of those experiences. Okay, so now that we've just talked about where to look when you're figuring out your professional value, and prior to that, we talked specifically about what you're looking for. Now what we're going to do is talk about when you've figured out that depth of knowledge, how do you share it powerfully with the world? Specifically, what are the steps that you can use to articulate your value and advocate for yourself? And we're going to do this in a couple of different contexts, both how can you pitch yourself generally, whether that's in a networking conversation or for a job interview, and then we're going to break down when you're actually applying for a job, how to leverage this information on your resume or leverage this information in an actual interview setting in different types of scenarios. So stick with me, we've got a lot of information in this section. So first of all, I am a huge fan of knowing how to pitch yourself. I think it's absolutely vital that you know your value and you can articulate your value on command, because you never know when you're going to have the opportunity to share what you're looking for with another person. You can run into your old boss who has an opportunity for you at the grocery store tomorrow, but if you're not ready with that pitch, then that person can't help you, and you might have just missed out on an incredible opportunity. So knowing and having a pitch prepared in advance is crucial to the job search process. This is true even if you think you're not that good at this part or you think that you don't have any professional value. We should have already gotten that out of the way. So first of all, to craft your career pitch, you'll want to know your main purpose. You'll want to then create context with a transition statement. You want to communicate your depth of value. That's the core of the pitch. And then you want to close with a question to re-engage your listener and to actually start the networking conversation. So I'm going to walk you through all 4 of these steps, and I want you to be taking notes as we go along. Number 1, you have got to know the purpose of your conversation. This is the most important reason that you might be pitching yourself and your vision for your career. So right now, I want you to ask yourself, if I could have one thing in my career right now, what would it be? Just one thing. Do you want a promotion? Do you want an introduction? Do you want to get a referral? Do you want to learn about a specific department or a role that you're interested in? Or do you want to find a partner or a sponsor or a mentor? Through this process, just for the next 4 steps, pick one thing that you need the most right now, and that's going to be the purpose for your very first professional pitch. Then I want you to start thinking about creating context with a transition statement. Now, this might seem like not that important of a step, but remember, whoever you're talking to is not in your head. They have no idea what's going on with you or what's been going on with you, and they have no idea how you got to where you are in this conversation. So it's your job to enroll them in your story and to get them on the same page that you are so that they have the best chance of helping you. So the purpose of this context statement, a transition statement, is simply to help the other person understand where you are in your life right now and why you're seeking their help. So this could be as simple as saying, I've been in the same department for many years and now I really want to make a change. Or I'm looking to gain new skills and use my strengths on a new project. Or, my life and my priorities have changed and I'm looking for a role with more flexibility. Anything that's going to give that person you're talking to context as to why you're having this conversation and why you're sharing your pitch with them, and allow them to get on the journey with you. Okay. So now once you've enrolled this person in the journey and you know why you're talking to them, then you really want to start communicating the depth of your value. You're going to use the data points that we've just worked really hard to discover, both from your nature and from your nurture, to create a comprehensive value statement. So what does a value statement look like? It's you describing your depth of value as a professional and why and how that adds value to a business or makes you relevant for a role that you're looking for. I'll say that again. But you want to articulate why and how you add value to a business and why you are relevant as a value add to a specific role that you are pursuing. And I promise you guys, you can do this. All you need to do is go back to those previous sections and break down your professional value and then weave a couple of sentences together talking about it confidently. And that's it. You can absolutely do this, I promise. Last but not least, you want to close with a question. Remember, you've just laid out a lot for this person. You've said, hey, I really want to talk to you about my career. This is why, and this is what I'm looking for. And here's the depth of my professional value. And they're probably going to be very wide-eyed and wondering, okay, great. How can I help with that? This is where you tell them how they can help you. And all you have to say is the question that you're looking for the answer for. Are there any open roles that come to mind to serve that function? Or are there any departments you know of working on the types of projects that I just described? Or can you connect me with a colleague who can utilize those skills I'm trying to build right now? This is your question and your chance to re-engage them and ask for what you actually need. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is so important when it comes to advocating for yourself. Closing with a question allows you to transition to a conversation. It allows you to clearly articulate what you need from that person. So that's why it's the fourth and final step in this pitch process. Now, I know that this may be super overwhelming, but that's why it's so important to practice, practice, practice. This is crucial, this statement here today, because your pitch is not just going to roll off of the tongue naturally right away. That doesn't happen for anybody. But with practice, I promise that you'll start to be able to articulate that pitch with more and more confidence. So once you have the pitch and how you can use it, you can start really deeply articulating your value in different places like interviews and applications. So once you have that pitch, how can you use it? Well, you could probably start by articulating your value in interviews and in applications. A couple of the ways that you can leverage this in interviews and in conversations are as follows. So part of what you want to demonstrate is your set of soft skills, right? And again, remember, these are not things that you can assume someone will know about you. These are things that you have to quantify and articulate confidently as you're advocating for yourself. This is your time to shine. So perhaps by demonstrating your soft skills, your punctuality and dependability, that is physically doing those things. You show up on time, you show up early. Active listening is a skill that you can demonstrate by simply looking a person in the eye, asking very specific follow-up questions. Effective communication. This might be first and foremost what you can do with your pitch. If you look prepared and you speak clearly and confidently about your value, you are showing and demonstrating that you can speak effectively. And then, of course, living in integrity, answering questions honestly and truthfully, knowing that if you don't, this is one of the things that I teach our clients all the time. It's best to be honest, because if you end up somewhere that you got to dishonestly, it may not be the best fit and it probably won't work out the way that you're hoping it will. Then you want to elaborate on your hard skills. Remember, this is how you articulate that depth of value that you've earned over time, whether that's from your experience and training, a portfolio that you bring along with you, answering technical questions related to the work that you're going to be doing, working through skill tests, or even providing them on your own. Sometimes I encourage our students, our clients, to bring their personality assessments with them as evidence, or to bring some type of skill test with them as evidence. It's always a nice sort of thing to look prepared. And then, of course, asking follow-up questions that are directly related to the work that you're going to be doing. When it comes to your resume, there's a very clear opportunity that you have to weave your skills and your strengths into your professional experience, okay? And specifically into the experience section. So when you're going step by step, remember how we broke down each job and the skills and the strengths that you earned from each role? This is where you can very clearly articulate those skills and those strengths right in your resume. And don't dance around them and use fancy words. Actually tell people what you did and what you learned and what you earned. A question I like to ask myself is, how did I become a more valuable employee through this experience? Right? Prove your value by weaving those skills and knowledge into that experience section. And then you can even add a separate list of skills. Now, remember, it may be a long time since you've written a resume. It was certainly a long time for me. I did one recently for business school and was like, what on earth goes in the skills section? Do not put like Microsoft Office, please. If you have a skills section, it should be something that is unique skill that you have earned. It could be agile development. It could be remote leadership. It could be specific programming languages. It could be specific applications. But remember to be very specific about what those are and specific about your level of expertise. You certainly don't want to oversell and underdeliver by any means.
Of course, I have to talk about Indeed Resume. One cool feature if you're building your resume on Indeed is that the resume tool may recommend skills to add based on the work experience you already entered. But you can also use the text box to enter skills, which will auto-populate to assist you. A reliable way to prove to employers that you have certain skills is completing a certification. These offer actual evidence that you've learned specific skills and are required for some fields. Depending on the certification, this is likely a bigger commitment to learning a new skill set. And it can be especially helpful when changing roles if you haven't used that skill yet in your work history. Another great way to evaluate your skills is to literally test them. You can take Indeed assessments across a number of categories like administration, customer service, technology, and sales. The assessments work in a couple of ways. You can proactively take them to add to your Indeed resume. This is useful because employers can browse Indeed's resume database much the same as you would look for jobs. And they can search for people with certain skills or who have taken specific assessments. Employers can also require assessments as part of their regular application process. Here's a tip though. I'd recommend you first take a test in an area that isn't very relevant to your career, so you can just practice using the tool before you get into the real one. After your assessment is complete, you can choose whether you'd like to make it visible to employers. To do this, navigate to your Indeed profile, scroll down to the assessment section, and just toggle on or off the visibility of your assessment result.
What a great tool, Brandy. That is so cool. And what a fun way to even just do a self-assessment prior to saying, to even building confidence in an area, right? Which actually is a beautiful transition to where we're going to go next, which is creating, or in some cases, for many of us, reclaiming our value-driven confidence. If you're in a job transition for any reason, it's highly likely that your confidence has taken a little beating, which is okay. You know, there are times in life where we don't feel our best. It happens to the best of us. I find that one of the most incredible ways to build our confidence back up or create it from scratch is by focusing on where we add the most value, and specifically by focusing on the exact areas in the world of work where you are the most effective. Of course, this also means where you can achieve the greatest impact. And when we do that, when we narrow in on the very specific field or industry or role, we can show up as the best version of ourselves. And that's where real confidence comes from. When you do that, you show up with more confidence, you show up with more certainty, all of which makes you look even more valuable than you already are, I promise. Now, gaining or reclaiming confidence is usually easier said than done because there are a couple of really important things standing in our way. There are a couple of barriers that many of us experience when it comes to confidence. First of all, we've got the imposter syndrome. So if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know what the imposter syndrome is, that's when you're in a specific environment or a situation, but you feel as if you don't belong there. You feel as if you're not worthy of what you already know, and you feel like an imposter. Imposter syndrome, raise your proverbial hand. I've been there. But it's when we tell ourselves for whatever reason that we don't belong or we aren't worthy to be somewhere that we already are or are actually worthy of being in. When in most cases, this is just a psychological phenomenon. We're basically psyching ourselves out from showing up with confidence when we actually do have the skills and the knowledge and the expertise to be excellent in the area that we've chosen. How we overcome the imposter syndrome is with clarity. It's with knowledge. It's going through the paces of what I just talked through, doing all the self-awareness, the assessments, asking for feedback, doing a deep dive of your work experience and your education and your life experiences. That's how you show up with confidence, and it's how you overcome something like the imposter syndrome. Another thing that might be standing in your way is a fixed mindset. So thinking that where you are is where you'll always be and that you're incapable of growth or of becoming a better version of yourself. That is simply not true. In this moment today, think about 1 year ago and look at yourself now. What can you do now that you couldn't do a year ago? How have you overcome? How have you grown as a person? How have you grown as a professional in the last year? Give yourself data and facts to overcome a fixed mindset so that you can show and prove to yourself that you can grow and you can do this, you can learn, and you can become an even better version of yourself. And then I think one of the biggest barriers to confidence that I see, especially with our students, is simply a lack of clarity. When we lack clarity as to where our value is or what our value is or what the ideal role for us is as unique individuals, it's so much harder to show up with confidence. When you're just applying to random jobs and hoping that someone sees something in you, you're showing up with a totally different energy than when you're applying for only the jobs that you know you would perform the best at. And when you know the depth of your own professional value and you're very specific and very intentional about that application. So clarity is key. Finding the depth of your own professional value can be a huge way to overcome a lack of confidence that you might currently have. So what did you learn here today? Hopefully a lot. I know we flew through a lot of this, you guys. First of all, I wanted to make sure you know that it's super important that you know the depth of your professional value and a good foundation of what those skills might be and what those strengths might be. Of course, then I hope that you gathered 2 really core places to look when you're trying to discover the depth of your professional value, and my favorite 4 steps to articulating your value and how to use that pitch in an interview or in your resume. And then last but not least, I hope that you feel more confident. I hope that you've learned a couple of ways to add more confidence in the next step in your career. Thank you guys so much for having me. Brandy, thank you so much to you and the team at Indeed. I love working with you guys, and I'm honored to be featured on this Jobcast. I'm so excited to see what questions come up in the chat, and thank you so much, incredible audience, for showing up so powerfully today.
Thanks, Tracy. Now let's look at the top questions that came in. Top voted question number 1, are cover letters still important or are they old school and irrelevant? Tracy, what are your thoughts?
What a great question. So you guys, Brandy and I kind of went back and forth on, should we include cover letters? Like, not everybody has to write one. Not every job, requires them. Here's the thing. I just went through the process of applying to business school, which is a lot like applying for a job. And I found that your resume only says so much. It's kind of short, right? And you write it in such a way that it's very technical. If you're applying for a job that will involve more soft skills, and if you have a particular gift for writing and written communication in general, I would highly recommend, even if you're not required to, including a cover letter or some statement of purpose or statement of objective, if you will, with your application, if there's a space for it. And the reason for that is getting to write in long form, even just a page or a paragraph's worth of information about yourself or your interests or your story, makes you a person. It makes you a human being. And guess who's reading your resume after that applicant tracking system? It's a human being. It's a human being who likely is the hiring manager or someone in HR that you're going to have to work with on a regular basis. And if you're relating to them as a fellow human being, they're going to see you as such. In my very first interview, maybe ever, I think I was in college still, and I was applying for my very first job after college. One of the guys at the end of the interview said, you know what? You're the first person all day that we can see ourselves sitting next to for a 12-hour day. And often a lot of that's only going to come through the interview, but a cover letter is a great opportunity to become that person in the mind's eye of whoever's reading your cover letter, to really relate to them as a person and to have an opportunity to showcase some of your soft skills or your written communication skills in a cooler format than maybe your resume.
Yeah. And we actually did a whole jobcast on cover letters. I dropped that link in the chat for you. But I also add, if the job posting says include a cover letter, make sure you're including a cover letter. You don't want to not follow instructions, right? That's not getting off on the right foot and showcasing your soft skills and all of that we talked about. So follow the instructions in the job posting. I'd say a cover letter doesn't hurt. And especially if you are, changing career paths or anything like that, it just gives you a platform to tell that story, like Tracy said. So the next question is, how can one navigate as an introvert in an extroverted society and workforce, especially in successfully selling yourself? Oh, that's a tough one. I know that I struggle as an introvert sometimes, especially on big webinars like this. So it's definitely a skill within itself to be able to navigate as an introvert. But Tracy, I'm curious your thoughts.
I really love that question. And thank you to whoever wrote that. It's particularly brave, I think, to ask a question like that when it's not your purview to necessarily put yourself out there. And that's what I hear from introverts. But what I find, and again, this works for the students that I've coached. I'm not an introvert, so I'm giving you advice from an extrovert's perspective of working with a lot of introverts because we end up doing a lot of that. I find that preparedness often overcomes a hesitance to speak about yourself. So extroverts and introverts alike, most of us hesitate to advocate for our own value, either because we don't know it or because we don't feel comfortable sharing it. Not knowing it is something you can overcome by doing what we talked about today. Becoming comfortable sharing it is something that you will have to practice, simply because there is no alternative. And I'll tell you why. This may be a scary stat, but it's true. And so you're just going to have to deal with it, right? we got to know the truth and work around it or work with it. 80% of jobs, this was a Columbia University study that came out last year. Roughly 80% of jobs that are available at any moment in time are not posted and do not have job descriptions that are like readily available online or what have you. Now that means that in order to find 80% of the jobs that are out there, which likely are going to be the most unique and least cookie cutter and the best fitting for you as a unique individual, is going to require you to talk to humans, period. Or you can say, okay, if that's something I'm not willing to do, then fine. You're going to be looking at those 20% of jobs that are a little more readily available and are a little more cookie cutter. And that's okay. You can make that decision. But if you want something a little more dynamic and you want to push yourself in this area, the best thing you can do as an introvert is to be prepared with something you feel comfortable saying. And I find the only way to start feeling comfortable talking about your value is to practice it. Talk in front of the mirror, talk to your cat, talk to your dog, talk to your best friend, talk to your spouse, talk to anybody that you feel comfortable talking to, and get it out of your head and into your mouth so it starts to feel comfortable. The only reason, you guys, that I'm any good at this stuff is I've said all the things I said today about 100 other times on 100 other presentations. This is not magic. Do I have a propensity to be outgoing and sort of extroverted? 100%. But I feel most confident when I'm ready. I feel most confident when I know what I'm going to say. Am I good at extemporaneous speaking? Sure. But your confidence and your assurance as an introvert to speak about your professional value is going to come most easily when you've practiced it and when you're prepared, period. And that's my best answer to that question, because you're not going to change who you are. You're not going to change who you are. So work with it and use it. Use what you're good at.
Yeah. And I mean, that's so relevant to what we talked about today with your nature and that self-reflection and understanding, what you're bringing to the table. Just knowing yourself and knowing that you're an introvert and that's an area that you struggle with can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
A related question, I'd say kind of the other side of things that came up is, where do you draw the line between promoting your skills and bragging?
Okay, I really love this question. I'm so glad somebody asked this because in the same way that there is a difference between advocating for yourself and complaining, right? Like asking for more work, asking for something. There's a difference between that and saying, I'm not happy, yada, 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 right? There's a difference between complaining and advocating. There's also a difference between bragging and advocating. Bragging is talking about your value when you don't really need to. Advocating is talking about your value professionally when it's time, meaning in a raise type of conversation, in a promotion type of conversation, in a finding a partnership type of conversation, in business development, right? Advocating for yourself, articulating your value as a professional should happen when that moment is called on. Bragging is what you do around the water cooler or with your friends or what have you, when it doesn't really add any value to you or to the individuals that you're talking to. If you find that you're telling things about yourself that don't add specific professional value in the conversation, you may have edged over into bragging. I find that being an extrovert and also being a high sort of sociability type person in my predictive index, I tend to exaggerate a little bit just by nature. So maybe use 30 words when 3 would have been fine. So I'm probably guilty of this, maybe more than the average person. So I would say if you're worried about bragging, stick to the facts. Just stick to the clearly articulated facts about what you have done that's added value in your job. And share those facts when the time is right, not just all the time. And that's probably a good place to start. And then if you feel yourself getting uncomfortable or as though the people who you're talking to aren't receiving it well, then maybe take a step back, give your pitch to an honest friend and say, am I bragging or am I telling the truth? Am I oversharing or am I being clear? And that's a good litmus test oftentimes.
Yeah, you have to kind of lean into that emotional intelligence a little bit and just pick up on the cues in the room and know when to talk about it, not just, what you're talking about. Another question here, in this day and age of applicant tracking systems, how do you break through while also constructing a resume that's both accurate and reads well to a human? That is such a relevant question. You're having to balance the computer, reading your resume and the hiring manager and recruiter reading your resume. Tracy, what are your thoughts?
Oh, you guys, applicant tracking systems are like the bane of my existence as a clarity coach, because if I could do away with them, frankly, I would. They serve a purpose for these massive companies who just simply don't have time to go through the hundreds or thousands of resumes that they get. And so I understand completely. I think Indeed probably has an ATS type tool where you can put you can put a job in and you can put a resume in and you can see how well you match. I would 100% start there. But my best trick to work around this is to find your way to a human being as quickly as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that doing the resume deep dive and those sort of things isn't important and you can skip it. But I find that if you find your way to a human who you can talk to about your value faster, whether that's the hiring manager, someone who already works there, someone who's involved in the hiring process, then you can sometimes fast track that process. To do a deep dive of how to actually write the resume, I'll just tell you right now, honestly, that's not my personal area of expertise. I would definitely lean on Indeed for that. But certainly if you can find your way to a person faster, that's going to be your best bet.
Yeah, and I just dropped a link in the chat for our jobcast that was specifically about your resume. So check that out because, there's a lot of details and thinking that goes into that. Specifically for the ATS, I'd say the biggest takeaway is make sure you're putting keywords from the job posting into your resume and your application, your cover letter. That's probably what the ATS is going to be searching for and matching back to, the requirements on the job posting. Are they shown on your resume? Now, they will also be checking to make sure you're not just like loading in all of the keywords. And like you said, you want it to be readable for a human as well. So I just say, make sure that your language and keywords match what the job posting or the company page is talking about. If you found this to be helpful, check out our other Jobcasts at Indeed.com/Jobcast and follow Indeed on social media. Have a question? Leave it as a video comment for the Indeed team. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more career advice. Thanks for watching.